So this is unregulated capitalism, which then leads to corporate rule. Corporations capture the government.
It's the natural inclination of every company to become a monopoly, and that's
right, and I'm actually agreeing with you. So what happens is if you don't regulate capitalism, it inevitably becomes corporatism. And corporatism is the exact opposite of capitalism. It tries to destroy free markets, destroy competition, and become a monopoly. So Adam Smith was right. You have to guard against monopolies. If you don't regulate, then capitalism will turn into corporatism and destroy free markets.
I'm saying it. And on that note, Cenk Uygur, aka Shaky Gurga.
What's up? You got a chair?
Hold on. Are you all right? You sound sick.
No, I'm good.
Hold on. I'll grab you a chair right now. Here, the mic is on. You can speak into it, but I'll
Hey, what's up, guys? What's up? Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. My mom made some good turkey. Yeah, right there, brothers and sisters, right there.
There you go.
All right.
People are spamming.
They should. I like it.
Shaky Gurg is in the building, everybody. Hold on. All right, this is good. This is a better angle, I think. And you can even hold on. Let me fix this. Let me zoom in a little bit more. Boom.
Yeah, better. Less stomach better.
Okay, there it is. Can you guys hear him? As you guys know, it's a time-honored tradition every single year since 2018 to have Cenk Uygur in the building. Okay, let's start off with why you said that you were going to your communist nephew's house. I can't tell if you were memeing or if you're being serious. Have I been upgraded to communist?
Okay, actually, you tell me. I'm kidding, but so people are constantly calling you all sorts of names. You go to China, you love it over there. So what should we call you? What are you?
I mean, I say I'm a socialist. I'm not like a self-described communist or anything, but I also say that I don't have an issue with people calling me a communist. I just think it's funny when people say that.
Okay, all right. Then I got it right. Okay, I was playing around. Yeah, you're a socialist. God bless.
Yeah. But yeah, no, a lot of people have been saying that I'm a authoritarian communist. That's what they're saying. Well, not everybody. Some people say I'm a revisionist and therefore a social fascist. But those guys are the real commies. You know what I mean? That's the real Max Left.
Okay, yeah. Luckily, I don't even know those folks.
You probably they're in your replies, I suspect. Actually, they might have given up on you at this point.
Oh yeah.
They yell at me all the time, though. Not that it matters. All right. I will keep calling you a centrist, lol. Yeah, people say I'm a centrist.
Well, the political spectrum has moved. If you are a centrist,
so
although kind of, I mean, look, you backed Mamdani 200%. Mamdani's now bros with Trump. I mean, if that's not centrism,
it's the horseshoe. Yeah, by transitive property, I'm homies with Trump. But obviously, we already knew that, and technically you too, because we were far too critical of Kamala Harris. And if you're critical of Kamala Harris, who was the best possible candidate at the time, that means you wanted Donald Trump to win.
Yeah, I actually think that we have thoroughly defeated those guys. So there's a lot of folks out there that are still in the, in the circle for who might come out ahead, right, in terms of ideology. But the guys who are not going to win, I don't think, are the ones who are like, oh, Kamala was right all along. Like, that's kind of done, right? So the way that makes a comeback is through the form of Buttigieg or Newsom, right? So those guys aren't done. But like the Kamala stands, the beehive is dead, right? There's not a single
K-hive. Yeah.
Yeah, K-hive. Right.
Yeah,
There's not a K left in the hive.
Yeah, beehive is very much alive. There's a bayhive.
Bayhive, yeah, that's the biggest one. But her and Taylor Swift are immortal. But in politics, Kamala's done.
All right, so we've had many a battles on this broadcast about our disagreements, but I think it's important to start the conversation with our agreements. You've been manning the ship on Piers Morgan every single time you appear, defending Palestinians and Palestinian humanity. Has your attitude shifted on this issue over the last 2 years?
Maybe a little bit, actually. That's interesting. So I've always been obviously against all of Israel's war crimes, its occupation, etc. And so October 7th, the day itself, was of course bad, and then the reaction has been horrific, and it's an obvious genocide. And we said that from day one. We took a lot of shit for saying it's a genocide early. We took a lot of shit for saying they were doing it to steal land. Oh, trope, blah, 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 right? And they stole the land. It was always for ethnic cleansing. So we've been on the right side of that through and through. The only thing that I'd say is that I didn't, I grew up in East Brunswick, which is a kind of a
communist safe haven.
It's the original Israel. It's a safe haven for Jews. So it was about 40-50% Jewish, right? So I grew up with a culture that believed that Israel was righteous and holy, right? And so I think that through this 2-year process, I've now come to the point where, like, no, it's no question at all that it shouldn't have been formed. And
Ooh.
And so that's a kind of I wasn't there before.
Oh no, I know.
Yeah, and of course it's a huge injustice, and I've always known it was a huge injustice. In fact, this is the one thing I used to catch shit for, because I was against the occupation back in high school, and we went to Model Congress, and I was the only one who got a bill passed, and it was to defund Israel. That was back in 1988. Okay. So I knew that it was a huge injustice. I knew the occupation was terrible all along, but like now seeing the totality of the circumstances, as much as after the Holocaust, I get the overwhelming need for a safe haven for Jews in the world. It turns out.
Yeah. East Brunswick, New Jersey.
Exactly. East Brunswick was totally fine. And no, it was the original Zionist slogan of taking a people without a land to a land without a people is by definition a horrific injustice, because the land did have a people, and they were the only way that you were going to move them is by killing them. And that's what they did. So 1948 honestly was land theft. 1967 was definitely land theft. And by the way, this is the propaganda that unks like me grew up with. We were taught that 1967
defensive war.
Yeah, no, not even. We were taught that Israel was attacked. Just flat out lie.
The greatest military conquest of all, right? That's the way it's taught.
Yeah. So it was taught to us that that Israel was attacked, and they had no choice but to destroy the air force of all of the neighboring countries, to destroy their militaries, to defend themselves.
Preemptively.
No, but that's what I'm telling you, Has. They didn't even add preemptively. They just lied to us and said that the Arabs went first, okay? Which is just a flat out lie. Yeah. And then so they said, and I believed it at the time, I'm a kid, right? That they had to take buffer zones, and that's why they originally took the West Bank, Golan Heights, Sinai, and Gaza. But no, now I realize, no, the Greater Israel Project was from day one. They attacked, and they attacked last time in 1967 to take more land and do more ethnic cleansing, and that's what they did.
I think given the state of affairs in 2025, especially after 2 years of Israel's genocide, and also the endless amount of arrogance of Zionists on television and their demands for censorship, this conversation that's taking place is probably taking place in many American tables, regardless of the political ideology at play. You know, you and I have difference in opinion on certain issues, but ultimately this is something that we completely unite on and completely agree on. And I think that is actually a point of agreement for many people, even like evangelical Christians and whatnot, that are probably having the exact same conversation. So remember that for the Thanksgiving enjoyers, when you're with your family, if you want to unite on certain things, I think Israel will probably be one of those points of contention, or Zohran Mamdani. So what do you think about Zohran Mamdani?
Yeah, just real quick before we go on to Zohran. Look, I never thought this would happen in my lifetime.
Oh yeah, me either.
Like that Israel would be, that that people would understand what's happening about Israel and the injustice of Israel, not just on the left, but the left, right, and center, that the whole country would agree, outside of mainstream media, outside of the politicians, no, we're done with these guys. And this is a gigantic injustice. And most importantly, we all now agree we've all been lied to by legacy media, right? Corporate media is poison. It's the biggest toxic influence in America. Now the right, the left, the center, everyone agrees. Corporate media, they've been lying to us from day one. So look, that's another one. For 20 years I've been saying that. And to see everybody come around to that, I love it. I love it. So Zoran. So Zoran's to the left of me. So it makes sense that like he's kind of perfect for you, right? I think, you tell me, but I love it. I love it because it's change. I love it because middle finger to AIPAC that spent $45 million trying to meddle in our elections, and them. Why don't they go back to their own country? Okay, New York is in America. It's not in Israel. It's not Tel Aviv. Okay, and I'm proud that it's the largest Jewish city, and I'm proud that they voted for Zoran, right? So this division on trying to divide Americans with Jew, Muslim, Christian, etc. No, we're America. They're not America, and that's that. And then he's for change, man. The status quo. So I'm thrilled that Andrew Cuomo lost.
Why do you say he's more to the left than you?
So some of those policies are not the direction I'd go, but I want him to try it anyway.
Like what are the policies?
So like rent freeze on the rent control apartments. First of all, I don't think he's saying that'll solve the whole thing. It won't.
No,
it only affects a tiny amount of apartments, right? But
1.2 million units or something, I think.
Yeah, which is not tiny actually.
Yeah,
but,
I mean it's tiny for New York, but go on.
Yeah, but rent control, in my opinion, doesn't work. It pushes up prices in other apartment buildings. In fact, I think it's counterproductive. I wish it worked. It's a simpler solution.
Okay, Matt
but I don't
Iglesias.
think. Yeah. I'm Matt Iglesias.
Are you an abundist?
No.
You're not an Ezra Klein doctrine understander and appreciator?
No, I mean, I'd have that conversation with Ezra, and I think he's probably at least a third right, but he's not right in the central thesis, which I think is misguided, right? But no, on rent control, I'm definitely a centrist.
Okay, what about public housing?
Yeah.
What about building robust socialized housing as a way to boost the number of available units and as a way to deflate the existing housing market and the prices?
So we've done public housing terribly in the past. We've done public housing in rare cases pretty good in America. So, but this is the year 2025, and Zoran's a smart guy. So I hope we learn some of our lessons, that we don't like make. Well,
he hasn't ran on, building public housing. As a matter of fact, I think it's a major area of weakness for the American left in general, because there's not a single Democrat that even broaches the subject matter from that angle. And every single person, even though it's the number one, like affordability is the number one priority, but affordability, as you know better than anybody else, brackets off into certain aspects, right? Healthcare is a part of the affordability conversation. And I think Democrats do have, or at least the left flank in the Democratic Party has a really solid approach to that. Socialized medicine, Medicare for all. But housing is another aspect of this that no one ever talks about. Or they do talk about it, but they don't actually have a simple, easy to understand policy for it. That's why we keep consistently going back and forth on Band-Aid solutions, which you're right. Rent control is a Band-Aid solution. I'm in favor of the decommodification of housing in general. So obviously this works in that direction. But
yeah, I'm not for decommodification of housing, but I agree with you on public housing, and I think that there's a right way to do it. So the problem was that we concentrated poverty last time, right? When we didn't know what we were doing in the 1960s and 70s. So now we've done it right a couple of times, spread it out a little bit and make it more mixed housing, but it at least creates more units, helps supply and demand in bringing down, in creating higher supply, so bringing down prices. So there's a lot of logic in it.
Yeah, but he's not advocating for socialized housing, but I do think that this is the next initiative. If the Democrats actually do have this robust left flank movement and, start unseating establishment Democrats and put forward DSA candidates and things of that nature, I hope that there will be a more united message on that, where people will approach the subject of housing in a similar vein. Where they do talk about permanent public housing and better alternatives.
Yeah. So the other thing that I don't necessarily agree with, but I want them to try, is the city-run grocery stores. So like, I don't get it. I don't know why that's the biggest among the biggest priorities. I get some food deserts. I get that there's some some more high-density minority areas where it could be helpful. On the other hand, it's like a Muslim unemployment plan in New York. All the bodegas are run by Muslims. So I'm exaggerating, but like, I don't know that was a big pressing need. But I want them to try it. I want them to try the free busing, and if it works, great. If it doesn't work, so what?
So why do capitalists hate government intervention in the markets? Because they want to set the prices under what they consider as market conditions. So basically, I think the way this would work, it's a pilot program with no assurances that it'll be 100% successful. But I think ultimately the goal there is to try and drive down profits with with much better, much more affordable groceries being sold, because there's a bunch of different things that you don't have to pay for, like licensing and things of that nature, when you have the government-run grocery stores. So therefore, the goal is to drive down prices for other grocery chains, specifically like the big retailers, I think, like big grocery chains in general.
Yeah, let's try it. See what happens.
Yeah. Also, they do have it. I mean, it's the commissary in the military, right? Which the Trump administration is trying to privatize right now, because I think they just want to do a mutiny. They want to foment mutiny in the military.
So look, if you're on the right and you're like, oh, you just want to just try it, like, yeah, because that's how we learn, right?
But that's how so many people voted for Donald Trump. Oh, I just want to try it out again because we got to shake up the system.
Yeah, and the states are supposed to be, laboratories where we experiment. And by the way, some of the rights say, can you name it? Some guy on Fox was like, can you name any time that they made something public and it worked better? Yeah, like bank in North Dakota. They created a state bank. It worked great.
Municipal utilities. Yeah. Literally almost every single time the municipality has taken over utilities, it has been so successful that Google worked extra hard to make it illegal in other places. Like, they do not want internet service providers or water or electricity or sewage systems to be controlled by the municipality. But yes, fire department is another great example of this as well.
And that goes to the last point, which is we don't know what should be public and private perfectly until we try a couple of different systems. Wow. Like, theoretically, you know it a little bit better if you study other countries. You'll have better examples, etc. But like, the fire department used to be private, and that turned into a disaster because if you're...
I got an idea of what should be public and what should be private.
Yeah.
I think most of it should be publicly owned.
Yeah, and I think most of it should be privately owned.
That's crazy.
But that's okay.
Well, you're living in it. It's America.
No, it isn't. It isn't. So, okay, now I'll make an argument that I'm a better capitalist than anyone on the right wing.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because the capitalism is all about free markets and competition. The problem is that right now, what the Uniparty is in favor of, what almost all the Republican politicians are in favor of, and what a lot of the right wing got tricked for a long time into being in favor of, is corporatism, right? So this is unregulated capitalism, which then leads to corporate rule. Corporations capture the government.
It's the natural inclination of every company to become a monopoly, and that's
right. And I'm actually agreeing with you. So what happens is, if you don't regulate capitalism, it inevitably becomes corporatism. And corporatism is the exact opposite of capitalism. It tries to destroy free markets, destroy competition, and become a monopoly, right? And it does it mainly through government capture. So Adam Smith was right. You have to guard against monopolies. You must regulate. If you don't regulate, then capitalism will turn into corporatism and destroy free markets. So that's why that position is more ideologically correct.
But you're not in favor of that for healthcare.
No, because capitalism means by definition a mixed economy, right? There is no non-mixed economies. The military's public, police are public, fire is public. And so when you go down the list, healthcare is perfect for public. Healthcare insurance is perfect for public rather than private. Why? Number one, like fires, viruses spread. So whether your neighbor is healthy or not is relevant to you. Number two, it's a combined pool, makes it a lot less, more efficient. And then most importantly, if you put a profit motive on denying healthcare, which is your costs, they will deny healthcare to the maximum, to their maximum ability to maximize profit. So then you've literally built an industry that is better served by killing more people, right? So, and that's why over 70,000 Americans die every year because they don't have health insurance. That's among the reasons why. And way more die because their insurance didn't cover the thing that they had because we privatized it. It's actually mental to privatize health insurance. It's just as dumb as privatizing cops, or even worse, the fire department.
I mean, I feel the same way about housing in general. Like, I don't think it means that it has to be like gray, brutalist architecture and city blocks. There are plenty of examples from Singapore to China, all the way to Austria, Vienna, where socialized housing runs supreme. Even in Hong Kong, as a matter of fact. And I was actually surprised to find this out, but I believe it's like 52% of everyone living in Hong Kong actually live in government housing. But that also has a major benefits cliff. So that actually keeps wages relatively low or people unemployed in an effort to make sure that they're still in government housing, because every house that is not owned by the government, that is not public housing, is so unimaginably expensive. Like the price difference is like $300. Let's say the price difference is like $300 for government housing versus like $7,000 for a private unit. Like the cheapest private unit is so much higher that people would rather just like be unemployed than to actually get like that fiscal cliff would not exist under a universal program. And if people wanted luxury housing beyond that, they could choose to spend all the extra dollars and get taxed out the ass in order to have the luxurious privilege of having this mega mansion or whatever.
Yeah. So look, I'm not anywhere near that. I think housing should be totally private, but not totally private. I'm willing to experiment with public housing in certain circumstances and see how it goes and how does it affect the market. Does it, like we talked about earlier, create more supply and hence help with prices, right? And, is there a bare minimum where we should help people not be on the streets? Of course, right? So then, in the lower levels, you're having a conversation is what degree is it public? Because if they're I think we all agree if they're homeless and they want shelter, we should give them shelter, right? So that's in a sense public housing, like the lowest level.
But it's not permanent, right?
So it's not permanent. But I'm just saying that at the lower levels, by definition, you have to have some sort of public housing.
Yeah, you're saying like you have to have some sort of permanent public housing for people who just like literally have no other option.
I think that's a possibility.
Yeah,
right?
okay.
And so, but the minute you get into the middle class and beyond, you got to have a normal market, I think.
Why? Why do you think so? Like, what do you think are the downsides of public housing?
Anytime that we like I do believe in the markets. So if you're going to have public sneakers or burgers or jeans or even houses or cars.
Okay. There's a difference.
Okay.
One is clothing versus the other is shelter though. Right. Like that's why I say like, yeah, you can have a private market or a free enterprise for small businesses, for, or even for certain goods that people are offering. But when it comes down to the things that are necessary for survival, I'm a believer that the profit incentive creates a negative experience for people that simply need to get this thing to survive. And I think it would make the public overall much more productive. And the same goes for education. Same goes for housing, and the same goes for like basic necessities such as food, even though there can obviously still be a private market on top of that. So,
but it seems like you're saying all for like the bare necessities, which then makes more sense. Like at the higher levels, you're going to let wealthy folks buy whatever house they want, right?
Yeah, I mean, But again, that needs to come with a cost, so it's not as easily accessible.
Wow.
Like the reason why I went back to Singapore as an example is because like it's tiny, right? And there's not a lot of cars. And from what I understand, like in order to get a car in Singapore, you have to be incredibly wealthy. And the reason and the government has already made it so easy to use public transit or to use bicycles and numerous different methods of transportation that are not only cost effective, but also much more viable for climate change, right? Avoiding ecological disaster. So the way that it should work, I think, is that if you want to get a car, you have to get like penalized for it, basically, in that structure. And the same goes for wanting luxury housing. Like, I see housing as a necessity, and homes are for living in it rather than a speculative asset in the way that it works in the United States of America.
Oh.
And we've sold to the Americans that this concept is good and it actually invokes freedom, just as we have done with our car-reliant infrastructure. Oh, you have your own car, you have so much freedom. You don't have to sit with the rest of the public in a subway or whatever, but that creates unimaginable traffic density. It's worse for the climate overall. And it even has economic issues associated with it. And the same goes for housing too.
Yeah. So look, I'm not an expert on housing or car regulations or anything, but my general sense of it is no. First of all, there's nothing wrong with disagreement, but I don't agree. So when you talk in bare necessities, make sure people don't die in the streets. I totally agree. Right. I think that everyone agrees. I think that even the right wing agrees to that. I hope.
I don't think they do, but
yeah. Well, I mean, I think that if you said to them shelter for homeless people, they would generally say yes, partly to get them off the streets, but partly because, they think they should have shelter. Right.
Oh, yeah. Congestion pricing in New York City is like a move in the right direction of this sort as well. Like making it more costly to be able to drive a vehicle actually increases the use for public transit, because then people are like, all right, well, I'd rather utilize public transit then.
I'm mixed on social engineering. So I don't want to penalize people for getting houses. I don't see the point of it. And I think that the wealth creation we did for the middle class in America with houses was amazing. It was one of the best things we've ever done in American history. In fact, part of my
But
solution
that was social
housing,
engineering.
Well, first of all, you could say any city planning is social engineering.
Yeah.
A bridge is
Everything
social engineering, right?
It goes back to the same concept. Yes, all matter of governance is technically authoritarian.
No, you could agree, and once you agree, then you execute it, right?
Yeah, but
so it's centralized.
But there's still going to be people
last
that don't
point
agree.
of contact, right?
Yeah, no, but people are still always going to disagree. It's just that it's for the disagreeers, that's technically authoritarian. For a pedophile, it's authoritarian that the government doesn't want him to f kids. You know what I mean? Like that's,
well, I know, but then
that's what I mean. In theory,
we're stretching the definition of authoritarian, because the authoritarian is one person controlling everyone.
Alan Dershowitz.
Right. Well, Barry Weiss thinks so, and he's more charismatic than you, apparently, according to Barry Weiss.
Yeah, even though
I found deeply amusing.
Even though, Barry Weiss is trying to get me to debate Ben Shapiro, who was sitting next to her when she said that. So that was doubly funny for me. I was like, damn, you guys have been trying to set up a debate between me and Ben Shapiro. Why are you saying I need to be deplatformed?
Yeah, and apparently you're not inside the 40-yard lines.
Yeah.
Anyways, so look, guys, you do government planning to set up a city for sure, no question. You need some degree of public everything, right? But then once you get into trying to, get into the pricing of things, that's where I'm out. I think the market should set the price. For people that are in middle class and above, for sure, then the question is, where's the cutoff? And that's a legitimate question to have. Part of my solution for housing is we have this populist plank, and the Rebellion PAC candidates sign on to it. And what that is in that case, is we ban private equity from buying residential real estate. So, and the reason we do that is because when they buy the homes, they're driving up prices because they're limiting supply, they're increasing demand. By definition, prices are going to go up, and they have made pricing go up tremendously, right? And there's no reason why bankers should be allowed to own private residential real estate, and it destroys the wealth creation for the middle class in America. And they're going to turn us all into renters, and it's going to be a disaster.
So there is a guy actually that has an opinion that is now the next mayor of New York, Zohran Mamdani, on socialized housing. Let's take a look.
American housing is in crisis.
You might recognize
right now,
his
up
voice.
to 12 million Americans are behind an average of $5,800 on rent and risk eviction. With eviction moratoriums soon to expire, we're facing an unprecedented wave of evictions and foreclosures that will crash straight into millions of struggling families across the country. But the truth is, this crisis didn't begin with the pandemic. In fact, housing has been in crisis for a very long time. Even before the pandemic, in places like New York or Los Angeles or San Francisco, median rents for even one-bedroom apartments could approach $2,500 a month or more. About a third of people in Los Angeles spend a majority of their income on housing. In New York City, about 20% of all renters pay most of their income to their landlord. And in my district, Astoria, about a quarter of residents have to spend most of their paycheck on rent. And the crisis isn't just in big cities. In 95% of all US counties, workers making the minimum don't make enough to afford a one-bedroom rental on their own. The Harvard Center for Housing Studies warns of a new normal for housing in the United States, in which nearly half of all renter households spend almost a third of their income on rent. That's why even before the fallout from the coronavirus started to hit, more than 500,000 Americans nationwide were all millions more on the brink of losing their housing, and countless families struggling every month to make ends meet. At the root of all of this suffering is the fact that in this country, housing is treated as a commodity, not a right. It's a consumer product, just like clothes or cars, that private businesses can sell on the market to make a profit. And if someone isn't able to pay, either because their landlord raised their rent or because they can't work for one reason or another, they're not able to stay in their homes. If they're lucky, they can live with friends or family, or maybe in transitional housing for a bit. But for a lot of people, they have nowhere else to go, and they end up sleeping on the streets. In December 2019, the number of people sleeping in homeless shelters in New York reached 19,000 people, an all-time high.
The number of homeless people, that means like couch surfers, people living in their cars, and people living in like tents and whatnot, I believe is over 660,000 in the United States of America.
100,000 New York City students are homeless. That's more than 10% of the entire student population. Why do so many people end up homeless? It's not because there aren't enough homes to go around. There are plenty of empty homes. No, it's because housing people is not the primary goal of developers or landlords. Their goal, simply put, is to make a profit. And it's much more profitable to build luxury apartments for the rich than decent homes for the poor. This gives us a big shortage of homes for ordinary working people. For every 100 households that are extremely low income, there are only 36 affordable and available homes. As a result, we have plenty of housing for the rich, but poor and working class people don't have nearly enough on the market. So we have people scrounging to make ends meet or sleeping on the streets right below luxury condos and uninhabited apartments. This is a terrible way to organize a housing market. It might be profitable for landlords and developers, but it's not efficient or beneficial for the rest.
The argument is the same. If there's inelastic demand for healthcare, which there is, right? What is inelastic demand? If you don't, for those of you who don't know, inelastic demand is if a good or a service is impossible to avoid. You need it for survival. As in, if you're diabetic, you need insulin. So no matter what the supplier, if the supplier restricts the number of insulin shots that are readily available, and the price will automatically go up because it's an absolute necessity. If you don't pay for insulin, you're going to die. I say the same argument goes for housing. Housing is an inelastic demand good, because if you don't have housing, you die.
Yeah. Again, at the lower levels. Once you get into middle class, this has not been that persuasive to me.
Well, hold on. There's more to the video.
Okay.
There's 5 more minutes. Let's
society.
take a look. This guy seems like real charismatic. Got a real bright future ahead of him. I don't know. Hopefully he runs for something. I think he was an assemblyman here. I don't know.
If
Maybe
you
he'll
told
run
me
for
a couple of years ago that this guy that made this video was going to become mayor of New York, I wouldn't have believed it in a million years.
Yeah, well, it's good. It's good that you're recognizing that. Let's take a look. Let's continue going with
housing
this.
doesn't have to be seen as a market at all. In other countries, housing is considered a fundamental right, like education or healthcare. That means the government goes to significant lengths to guarantee everyone has a home, and the market plays a much smaller role in the construction and distribution of housing. So let's hop across the pond and about 100 years back in time to take a look at just one example of how an alternative housing model got started in beautiful red Vienna. At the end of the First World War, the Austro-Hungarian Empire collapsed, leaving behind a number of successor states, including modern-day Austria, home to the former imperial capital of Vienna, the 5th largest city in the world. Despite being the seat of an empire, the chaos of the war and decades of neglect had left the working class of Vienna in desperate circumstances. Inflation was rampant, jobs were scarce, social services were non-existent, and hundreds of thousands of people were crammed into decaying tenements where overcrowding, disease, and violence were rampant. So it's no surprise that in 1919, at the first elections ever held in Austria where all adult citizens could vote, the Social Democratic Party swept into power at the municipal level on the promise of dramatic social and economic reform. And they delivered. The new government of Vienna implemented a huge range of services, including public health care and public child care. They built high-quality hospitals, schools, and recreational facilities. But their crowning achievement was an ambitious program of social housing, what Americans call public housing, that began in 1923 and saw 60,000 new apartments constructed in the first year of its existence, built by the government and financed by taxes on the
How'd they do that without the profit incentive? It's just so strange. I don't understand this.
But these weren't the kinds of apartments you might picture when you think of public housing in the United States. Drab high-rises plagued by chronic neglect and underinvestment. Residents could enjoy leafy courtyards, wide-open spaces, and plenty of natural light. They had shared laundries, state-of-the-art kitchens, food co-ops, bathhouses, pharmacies, lecture halls, schools, and swimming pools. These apartments...
Why are they not factoring in the moral harm of offering people housing at a cost affordable level and how that actually makes them lazier? It's a moral hazard.
No, I'm not worried about that. But brother, do we have enough money for everyone to have a house like this for 350 million people? You know we don't.
We absolutely do. We abso-freaking-lutely do. Federal jobs guarantee, a national initiative to build housing, localize it if you want. We absolutely do. 1,000,000%.
So you're going to do the free housing. You're going to do, okay.
It doesn't have to be. This is
health
not free.
insurance.
No, this isn't free.
So the government bills it. So we all pay for it.
We're all paying for it.
We all have enough money. Well, if we already all have enough money to afford houses like this, why don't we just buy houses like this?
Wait, what do you mean?
Like what is the government? The government has our money, right? In taxes. Collectively, we have to have enough money to build houses like this. If I was shown a plan where they said, oh, you can get all American people gorgeous houses like this with pools and gorgeous yards, etc., right?
How'd they do it?
Because they had enough money. For whatever reason, they had enough money at that time to be able to do it.
I feel like they may have had more of an initiative to actually utilize the taxable revenue in an appropriate direction, because they seemingly had more interest in solving this issue rather than subsidizing corporations and the super wealthy, or even on the housing front, offering more and more tax breaks and continuing the current private ownership structure that we have in this country.
But I want people to be clear about what I'm saying. Remember, I hate the current system. The current system isn't anywhere near ideal. It's corporate rule. Our government is completely bought by the donor class. And so nothing we're doing now is anywhere near market. It's anywhere near rational or logical. This is as corrupt a system as you could possibly find.
Well,
so if you're going to compare it to
I wouldn't say it's a corrupt system. I think it's the system
working.
Working.
Actually the most corrupt system in the world.
It's the system working as it's intended, though. Because
intended by who? For what?
If the goal is to drive up profits, or the goal is to commodify housing, which it is, right? Then yeah, for capital owners, this is not a bug. Is the system working as intended? I'll give you an example. You're a homeowner. I'm a homeowner, right? For many of us, for homeowners such as ourselves, maybe houses are just to live in, right? But for the overwhelming majority of homeowners, as you also described, housing is their nest egg. It's their opportunity for upward social mobility for their next generation, and it is an asset that you can leverage against, right? To take out a mortgage, or at least that's what people used to do before the whole interest rates went up, right? So it's a retirement plan. It's an asset. So ultimately, for even with our much lower home ownership rate in this country, still a decent chunk of Americans, around 50% of Americans, still look at this asset that they own as their entire net worth, as their entire existence, basically, as their retirement fund. And that's the reason why, if those prices were to deflate for 50% of the country, who are wealthier on average, if not some of the wealthiest in this country, this would be devastating. And that's part of the reason why we never deflate the price of housing in this country, because
why would we even want to do that? So look, we're having an enormously theoretical conversation that isn't anywhere near
I'm showing
reality
you,
today.
No. But what we're showing you is existent in practice, right? Because Vienna is still implementing social housing initiatives to this day. And not only that, but there are numerous other examples where the government actually does control housing. And the government controls housing in America too. We just do it through property tax rather than just like having direct ownership over land leases like they do in Singapore, for example, or like they do in China, for example. And then on top of that, they control flows of capital in China.
But do you see what I'm saying by how theoretical it is? Because first, we got to get money out of politics so we can get our government back. Like, that's step one, and we're not anywhere near step one. Once we get past
I don't
step one,
disagree with you on that.
Right.
I do think that's something that needs to happen. But if we're talking about a world in which, because like, you're not moving the needle in a more realistic direction, neither am I in that situation, because like we both agree on that issue, and that's a major hurdle, and we're not talking about that major hurdle right now. We're talking about a world in which, like, if you had the opportunity to make this grand design, which direction would you try to move towards? And this is what I'm saying.
So I'll tell you this. If we got to this magical, beautiful place, which, by the way, I think we can get to, although it's super, super hard, where we get money out of politics, we did a constitutional amendment, we freed the country, right? Then what I would love is for Rhode Island to try more public housing, for Nebraska to try more private housing, and for everyone to try all sorts of different things.
I think they're trying private housing in Nebraska.
Yeah, right.
They're not.
But you see my point.
They're trying private housing everywhere in this country.
No, but you see my point that I don't mind an experiment like this at all in that better world, right? Where we've regained democracy, right? And some places people will be a lot more right wing, a lot more leaning into the free market. Some places people will be more left.
I don't think right wingers are right wing because of the free market. I don't think so. I think rich right wingers are right wing because of the free market, but I don't think right wingers in general. Like you think West Virginia is what, plus 35 for Donald Trump? You think those guys are like, hell yeah, brother, we need more private housing in this state? No, they're just right wing because of their economic stances or their economic standing rather. And they've been pummeled by the Democrats, or they feel as though the Democrats are responsible because they're focusing on gay shit rather than building housing for them. And the Republicans take advantage of that weakness, take advantage of that anger and resentment, and redirect it towards gay people and undocumented migrants and the like.
So there's two different things here, right? Right-wing ideology and what do right-wing voters in America actually think, right? And so we found out through Donald Trump that all the bullshit that corporate media was telling us about right-wing ideology wasn't really true at all. Oh, the right-wing voters are all free trade. Are they? First of all, they didn't know and they didn't care, right? And if they cared at all, they were against it.
Yeah, no, yeah, they were against it. I think like Donald Trump picked up a lot of the NAFTA resentment votes from a lot of like formerly unionized workplaces and people that used to have people that used to work in industrial output that no longer had that job.
Yeah, so I think it's a little bit complicated because people grow up on corporate media, especially the older folks. So if you're above 45, you got brainwashed so thoroughly by corporate media that it's really hard to tell what you believe, right? And what you were told that you believe. Like, hey, you love Israel. Israel is a special ally, right? Our government is the best in the world. It's number one, right? All this, there's a million pieces of propaganda you and I have both fought against, and now a lot more people fight against, right? So yeah, some of them might have, if you asked them in a poll, are you for free trade? They might have said yes back in 2008, right? But in their heart, when you actually push them on that issue, were they for it? No, we agree they were not for it, right? So like when you take it to other issues, it gets complicated, right? So if you said to an average right winger today, are you for the free markets? I think over 90% would say yes. Now, do they really mean that? Well, it depends, right? First of all, what free markets are we talking about? We don't even have free markets. We have government capture by corporations. So we don't really we don't have free markets for drugs at all. We literally can't negotiate prices. It's the least free market there is in the world, right? So, okay, so then it gets super complicated as to what they mean by free markets. But overall, I take your point that they're not ideologues in that way. Like if you give them a nice populist program in West Virginia, they're going to say yes. West Virginia is not right wing. West Virginia is populist, right? Same with Kentucky.
I always say the racists need houses too, and they need healthcare too. And if you give them houses and then you say, hey, like you're going to have a house, but cut it with this racist shit, they're probably going to be like, okay, I like that. I would rather have a house than be racist. There will be some.
Well, look,
there will be some who will say, no, I actually do want to keep being racist. But ultimately, it's class first politics for that reason. But let's finish this video because he's gonna drive home this point
were
real
designed
quick.
to be both beautiful
And
to
then you
look
can
at
argue against
and
the next mayor of New York.
to live in,
I'm happy.
fostering a sense of shared community among the people who lived there. And the best part was that because the city didn't have to worry about making a profit, just about paying off their maintenance costs, these homes were both much nicer and much cheaper than what workers had previously known. In 1926, the average rent in Viennese social housing was about
Karl
just
Marx.
4% of a monthly wage.
Yeah.
The first 15 years after Austrian independence saw its capital transform from a symbol of urban blight into a beacon of socialist governance. It became known as Red Vienna, after the official color of the socialists who had pioneered these changes. And even though Red Vienna fell in 1934 when the country was seized by fascists, who did what they could to roll back social housing, that commitment to good, cheap housing remained after the Second World War. Today, an astonishing 62% of all city residents live in social housing.
What?
With the average monthly rent falling
How'd they do that? That's crazy.
somewhere between
It is. It's
$400 and $600 a month.
No, dude,
No.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. How'd they do that? Someone needs to put an end to this. You know what they need? They need good, wholesome, free market enterprise. Capitalism, not corporatism, but capitalism. That's what they need.
Subsidies for lower income
Get them
tenants.
out of there.
That is a fraction of what people in America pay. Unlike in the United States, where public housing is treated as a worst-case way to house the very poor, Vienna's social housing residents are extremely diverse. Everyone except the top fifth of the population is eligible to live in social housing. This means there's broad appeal across many segments of society, which creates the foundation for its political popularity. That is how the majority of people in Vienna enjoy something that's considered almost utopian here in New York. Affordable housing that isn't just cheap, but desirable. Housing that isn't just four walls and a roof, but a real home, with a sense of stability, safety, and community built in. Now, of course, this is only one example of an alternative framework for housing. And Vienna has not fully removed housing from the domain of the market. Residents still pay part of their earnings in rent to cover operational costs, and a sizable chunk of the population lives in private housing. But it's an actually existing alternative that shows us what a step toward a better world could look like. If we want to end the housing crisis, the solution has to be moving toward the full decommodification of housing. In other words, moving away from the status quo, in which most people access housing by purchasing it on the market, and toward a future where we guarantee high-quality housing to all as a human right. So how can we do it? We can start by making sure people who access housing on the private market have ironclad protections against abuse and exploitation. But to go further, toward the Vienna model, we'll have to go beyond the market. We can
So not only is the government a major market competitor that keeps prices relatively low, but there is regulation beyond that as well. And some version of this exists not just in Vienna, but like I said, in China and Singapore and numerous other places too. So it's already being implemented in many places around the planet. It's just unheard of in the United States of America. It's like not even considered.
Yeah. So, first of all, they got all that free public housing, and it made them so soft they lost the war.
Well, yeah, that's probably what it was. Yeah.
Okay, now in all seriousness, so listen, I'm not opposed to it. In fact, I think that we should study every model out there. So we should study the Finnish education system. We should study the Norwegian prison system. We should study how they legalize drugs in Portugal. And they're not all magic fixes, but they're interesting to incredible, right? We should study the what they did in Spain with.
I think these guys studied it before they implemented it, and their existence or the continued existence of the
Don't
system
be
is
simplistic. Just because it worked in Vienna, sorry, I don't mean it that way. It's just because it worked in Vienna doesn't mean that it's going to work everywhere. By the way, but because it worked in Vienna, it means that we should probably try it somewhere else too, right? So, and see if it works. So I don't mind all of those experimentations at all. So I'm not like, to me, when you say public or private, I got no problems trying it in every different way until we get to a system where we're super comfortable what should be public and private. But again, we're not anywhere near that conversation because right now our system is so, destroyed. And
2 years ago, you would have probably said that we're nowhere near demanding a complete defunding of all weapons transfers going to Israel. Things can change. My point is, it's good to have a North Star. And that's why I have no issue saying that this is my North Star. This is what I'm working in the direction of. Instead of conceding ahead of time, knowing that, there's going to be naysayers no matter what happens.
No, I think we could have massive change. That's why I started Justice Democrats. And I mean, we beat Crowley with AOC how many years ago, right?
Yeah.
And so do I think huge change is possible? Definitely. That's why I started Rebellion Pact. That's why I started Young Turks. I think enormous changes, not only possible right now, we're in a moment of potentially awesome change, right? For me, that's not the question. The question is, how do you get there? And the difference, Haas, and you saying that's your North Star, no problem. That's great. There's nothing wrong with that North Star. It might not be my North Star, but so what, right? So to me, what's important is step by step, right? So we all got to. Now, this is where we could have the much bigger disagreement. I don't know how you feel about it these days.
Step one, throw Ezra Klein in prison. Okay. Right. Step two, question mark. Step three, decommodified housing. I'm joking. Ezra Klein, if you see this, is a joke. Okay.
Okay. So
I think you are fine.
Okay. But now, like, the way more controversial thing is these days, I think we should unite with the right to defeat the establishment. So, because we can't defeat them on our own. And if we unite, we can actually win on Israel. We just kind of won on Epstein files, and we could even win on paid family leave. We might even be able to win on healthcare, because to your point and to my point, West Virginia and Kentucky, they want healthcare, right? They don't want money in politics. They actually agree with us on almost everything. They're anti-war, anti-corruption.
I don't disagree with you. I think the major disagreement that you and I have to a certain degree is, and I say this all the time, that, you need people. If you want to unite the people, you're going to have people that you disagree with in your movement, no matter what happens. The point is, you don't actually go to their side on, social issues or whatever, these things that are wedge issues that are used as a distraction to make it seem as though the uniparty consensus is actually not there on the issues that matter the most to every single person, healthcare, housing, and the like, and foreign policy. But to make them come to your side because you are offering them something, right? Offering them free healthcare, offering them housing. And that's how you bring them to your side. I don't have a disagreement there. I'm not saying like we just cut out, whoever has voted for Donald Trump and shoot ourselves in the foot regardless.
Yeah.
My point is always that we bring them to our side without having to concede on these other things. Like we don't concede on being unnecessarily cruel to undocumented migrants or being unnecessarily cruel to trans people and constantly talking about trans people this, trans people that. We just call it as it is. This is just a distraction. And I think the Trump administration's failures on affordability after winning the election against an administration that came across as old and unable to solve the 1.5 years of negative real wage growth that people experienced under the Biden administration and the inflation crisis that people were experiencing. And then hyper-focusing, which is what the Trump administration did, hyper-focusing on trans issues and things like that, actually present a unique opportunity to show people like, oh, guess what? Turns out it wasn't trans people that was making your rent more expensive. Turns out it wasn't a Guatemalan migrant that was the reason for why your healthcare is expensive. And that's what I try to do all the time.
So look, maybe it's an issue of timing, but first off, on should they come to us or should we go to them? It's kind of a false framing because since we agree on 70% of issues, neither side actually has to go anywhere. But if you're talking about traditional left-wing policies, that's literally what I've been doing the last 2 years. I've been saying yes to the right wing who are coming to our traditional policies, right? So you're anti-war, that's traditionally left wing, right? You're anti-corruption, that's traditionally left wing. You're for paid family leave because you want more babies and you want, et cetera, right? We want to treat American moms better. Great, that's traditionally left wing. You want lower drug prices, higher wages, all traditionally left wing. And I'm super happy to take their alliance in it, right? And what I'm saying is, okay, we just leave out the social issues in terms of our debate when we're working together, right? So we want to work together on banning private equity from buying up our residential real estate, or we want to work on anti-corruption. Okay, we'll argue about the social issues later, and there's nothing wrong with arguing about it, and neither side has to concede at all. So they could be like, okay, I'm massively anti-trans, and we could be massively pro-trans, or fill in the blank, Muslim, whatever the category is, right? But if we let that stop us in the beginning, we're never going to topple the establishment. And the establishment is a bigger enemy to both us and them than we are to each other.
So
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. But here's the problem. Josh Hawley is a great example of this, right? Like, I think or Tucker Carlson is a great example of this. I think there are a lot of people who understand that left populism, real populist economic policies, are actually extremely popular amongst the base, right? Across the board, regardless of whatever ideology they slot themselves into, most people find themselves in agreement with these policies. And the problem for them is that they have a higher priority for either the nationalist sentiment, and that's actually the goal that they're advancing, or the goal that they're working towards, which is, I think, in Tucker Carlson's case, that's the point, or they're just lying, but they recognize the popularity of these left populist policies, and they're trying to maintain a base of support. But when push comes to shove, just like with Josh Hawley, they will still be servants of capital. And that's the issue that I have with a lot of the right. And I think that's the issue that a lot of people have with the self-described right-wingers. Maybe not the right-wing voters in general, because those people can be convinced and moved. But most people in positions of power within the right-wing machine are either lying about being in favor of populism, or they care infinitely more about like implementing some kind of insane nationalistic policies.
All right, so let's take 5 different Republicans or right-wingers and give, and I think that'll help clarify the conversation. First of all, I agree with you, and that's the main point I make, is to make a differentiation between the leaders and the voters, okay? So attack the leaders, politicians, media, no problem, right? That's the game we're in. Don't attack the voters. They actually agree with us on 70% of stuff. Take yes for an answer. Okay. So now when you get to the 5 guys, so we all agree on a bunch of them. Mitch McConnell, corporate Democrat, corporate Republican, but really what's the difference? So like we hate him. The right wing base hates him. So we're past that. And that used to be our number one impediment. Then you get to Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon pretends to be the biggest populist on the right wing, like the godfather of populism in a lot of ways on the right wing. But I'm worried that he's utterly full of shit, right? So here he is behind the scenes working with Epstein, doing a fake wall, constantly scheming for power and more power. But like, wait a minute, I thought you were against the elites. And at every turn, it seems like behind the scenes, you're actually helping the elites, and you're using populism as a way to get popular to do your actual agenda. So I'm super worried about Steve Bannon, right? Now you move to Josh Hawley. Josh Hawley's got his foot in in Mitch McConnell's camp, and he's got his foot in populism. He did actually stop taking corporate PAC money, so he's not 100% full of shit like the other guys, like Ted Cruz, etc., right? So he's only 50% full of shit now. So that's an improvement, but at the end of the day, he's too attached to the old system. So he's going to side with the McConnells of the world, is my guess. So not that useful, right? So now we're left with 2 guys that are left, Tucker Carlson, and yeah, I'm going to say the word or the name, Nick Fuentes. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's I have stopped censoring that Nick Fuentes mentioned since he's getting fucking profiled by the New York Times, you know?
Yeah. So Tucker Carlson, I think, has a shot at actually meaning it. And so I'm not sure that I agree with you.
You and I have had a private conversation about this many years ago, and I think I've been vindicated on this.
I think I've been vindicated on it, but we can have that conversation in a minute. So to now you go to we'll come back to Tucker. You go to Fuentes, And so he seemed to be a classic guy who's, to be fair to him, not hiding his nationalism, right? So he was like, I'm going nationalist, I'm going Christian nationalist, white nationalist. It appeared to me, right? That was my original read of him. But now he's also changing. And so now I know we all cancel him to bejesus. And
I mean, he's
okay, Barry Weiss, if you're watching, which you obviously are,
Holocaust
right?
denier.
Right. So no problem. You deny the Holocaust, you say all these things. He's against race mixing. Well,
Yeah.
I'm married to an Asian woman. What am I going to agree with that? Right. So obviously we're against all that. But even now he has realized that's not actually where his audience is. So whether it's Craven,
I think he's a grifter. I think these guys are all grifters.
right, whether it's Craven or not, whether they're grifters or not, even Fuentes is now saying, he said it just like 2 days ago, you know what? Maybe we put aside the racism and the cruelty and the abuse, right? Which is an amazing admission, by the way, that kind of is the direction they were going, right? And he says maybe we put that aside.
I just don't
to be able to unite with the left.
I don't
so
believe
I'm
any
not
of these
saying
guys.
yes to Fuentes. I'm just saying look at the tide moving. The tide is moving towards populism because it's being driven by the audience. The audience wants real populism. So when they says bullshit, they don't want it, and they're pushing in a better direction. So why is Tucker, now let's go to the heart of it, Tucker, right? Why is Tucker to me today different than he was on Fox News? Because on Fox News, he worked for corporate media, and he says it now himself. He says, yeah, I mean, there were certain things we were allowed to say, not allowed to say. I regret a lot of the things that I said on there. So now he's more tethered to the audience than he is to Rupert Murdoch. And so he tries to serve his audience better. And now he says wrong about Iraq, right? Wrong about war overall, wrong about a bunch of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, have a lot of us on the left said as much as he has about all the things we're wrong about, right?
No, I don't say that at all.
See? So what my point is, not that he's right and we're wrong or anything along those lines, but he's at least making movements to go towards agreement.
You're saying that there's a broader trend line that's moving in the direction of left politics, and that is the reason why the likes of Tucker Carlson are retriangulating their messaging. That's somewhat understandable, but I do think that ultimately, I don't necessarily care for Tucker Carlson personally or Nick Fuentes, but I do care about changing the mindset of their audiences, because I find socially regressive politics to be, and reactionary politics to be, a distraction, and that anyone that does that to any degree is inherently reactionary and deliberately doing this because they want to move people's attention and focus away from the material inequities that they are facing and away from a steadfast approach to dealing with those problems. That is the reason why it's very easy for me to say all right-wingers in general are grifters, and even that moderation that they're engaging with is them simply reading the room and recognizing that they have to offer some kind of what you call populism, some kind of left-wing material solutions.
Let me say two things about
some
that.
of which do it because they want to maintain their popularity. Some of which do it because they have a higher degree of priority for like fomenting nationalistic sentiment, and they think this is the most effective way of doing it. I mean, Adolf Hitler was in charge of the National Socialist Party, right? Because at the time, socialism was a very popular movement. At a time when liberalism was failing, just as it is now, fascist movements were presenting themselves as revolutionary movements or an alternative to socialism that wasn't as scary. In Mussolini's Italy, it was bringing about a synthesis, as he would call it, of socialist sentiment, but also protecting the petite bourgeoisie.
Okay, so look, me, you, and maybe whoever it is that we want to assign as the avatar for nationalism. Well, you think it's Tucker, maybe it's Fuentes, maybe it's Megyn Kelly. I don't care, right? My point is, we might all have different agendas for what happens once we get out of the woods, right? Once we break out of the prison, to use a couple of different analogies. But we got to break out of the prison first. And once we break out of the prison, you want to go towards more socialism. Somebody wants to go towards more nationalism. I want to go towards democracy, free markets, etc., right? So, okay, but first we got to break out of the prison. So if you say to me, hey, let's say take Tucker. he has a hidden agenda, and it's nationalism.
And he's not even hidden.
Yeah. Okay, whatever. And he'll say to you, and you don't, to be fair to you, you don't hide that your North Star is more socialism, right?
Yeah, because there's a difference between those two concepts.
Yeah, I get it.
One is good. The other is an incredibly deadly, self-defeating, suicidal ideology.
Yeah, I don't love socialism. And again, it depends on what we mean. If we mean Northern Europe, then I kind of do love socialism. If we mean like Venezuela, then no, I don't love socialism.
Yeah,
and I get it. I don't want to get into that.
Socialism is an economic organization of socialism is a different organization of the economy. Venezuela and Norway actually have not even comparable degrees of socialization or nationalization. Norway actually has a higher degree of nationalization. Its entire extraction industry is nationalized, as opposed to Venezuela that has a lower degree of socialization.
Yeah, like naturalizing your oil reserves, by the way, is a super interesting idea. So that's what I'm saying.
No, but that's like the difference there is, of course, the way that the capitalist hegemonic superpowers have treated these countries. Norway is very close in proximity, or was very close in proximity to the USSR. So the threat of a good example from the USSR was what allowed a lot of these Western European countries to continue a degree of socialization, because they were conceding. Just like you're saying, Tucker Carlson is conceding to us on a lot of these issues. The capital owners there were conceding out of fear that if they don't concede at all, then they are going to become communist. Then the European countries are going to snap into revolutionary communist movements.
So I got you. But what I'm saying, Haas, is so socialism, we can have a great, wonderful debate about how mixed our economy should be. And whereas nationalism goes towards authoritarianism, and I'm never going to agree to authoritarianism. So I get it. I get that they're not the same. And I get that even though I might not agree with either, I'd rather lean to one side than the other for sure, because I don't want anything to do with authoritarianism.
What do you mean by that? Authoritarianism, like socialism leading to authoritarianism.
No, nationalism.
Or nationalism leading to authoritarianism.
Yeah, nationalism almost always leads to authoritarianism.
Well, it's because you have to eradicate, like, nationalism or fascism has a in-group, out-group dynamic. And there are inalienable characteristics that must be excised forcibly from society. So, of course, that is the reason why it has to be violent.
That's why I'm never going to agree with nationalism. That's why I'm saying, that's why I'm on the left.
Yeah.
So I'm closer to you than I am to a nationalist, but by a lot, right? Because nationalism is, you're right, is either white or Christian, or, by the way, it could be in a different country, Muslim or Jewish or black, whatever. But it's nationalism is exclusionary by definition.
Non-white nationalist movements have usually been, in the global South, or at least historically, have been liberation movements in general. Like Pan-Arabic nationalism, Pan-African nationalism. These are not the same as like the nationalism that you see in nationalism is understandably something that people hate and despise because it's in Western Europe or in America. It's the in-group that wants more domination and not the dominated population's emancipatory movement. Like I don't think you would disagree with like the FLN or something like Algeria. The decolonial initiatives in Algeria would be considered nationalistic
until they take over, right? So, like, if they went,
past
so
that
whoever's
point,
in power, it's
past
super
that point,
easy.
you have a nation state,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah, whoever's in power, if they're the majority and they do exclusionary nationalism, then obviously I'm going to be against it because I'm inclusive, not exclusive.
Yeah.
So,
all right, I'm gonna pee real quick. We'll finish this video while I go pee, and then you can talk to the chat.
Okay. Establish community land trusts to gradually buy up housing on the private market and convert it to community ownership. We can give tenants a right of first refusal to buy out their landlords when buildings go up for sale. And we can fully commit to a new era of social housing, ending subsidies for luxury housing development and using our wealth to build beautiful, high-quality social housing projects that offer good homes and strong communities to everyone. We won't decommodify housing overnight, but we know what we have to do, and we have history to guide us. And we know how we'll get there, through a movement of the multiracial working class organizing for the better world we know is possible. And we've already begun. I'm Zohran Mamdani, Assemblyman for New York's 36th Assembly District in Astoria, Queens, for the Gravel Institute.
All right. By the way, guys, Young Turks is turning 20 online So December 21st is our 20th anniversary on YouTube. So we'll do something on air on the 22nd, which is a Monday on December. But it's kind of neat. We're the first YouTube partner ever. So that makes me the original YouTuber. So we're turning 20 in that regard. We also had 3 years on radio before then. But it's kind of neat, and it's kind of interesting to see the evolution of all of us here, left, right. And I'll tell you, like, from my experience, having been here since kind of the beginning of time when it comes to online video and the internet, is that this is a breakthrough moment. We're finally getting to a place where people are becoming populist and are beginning to realize how corrupt the whole system is. And I've never been so excited. So, all right, to finish the thought.
What you say populist, I say is class politics.
Yeah, that's okay.
More and more people are self-identifying as socialist than ever before. Yes, we're going to wrap up in a second. More and more people are self-identifying as socialist in comparison to years prior, and I think that is what is good, because populism can go in either direction. It just means that you're like anti-neoliberal, you're anti-establishment. That's fine. I'm anti-neoliberal, I'm anti-establishment. But I think I call right-wing populists slopulous for that reason, where it's just like fake populism.
No, but don't do that. So number one, their voters aren't fake. They actually do want the same things we want.
I'm not talking about the voters.
They appear to be going to the left, but they're actually in the same place they always were, right? They always wanted those things. It's just the establishment lied to them. Corporate media lied to them and told them, oh, no, you don't want, lower drug prices. You don't want higher wages. And they did all that propaganda. Look, last thing on the nationalism is, look, Zionism is nationalism, and it's a disaster.
Yeah.
Because it means, by definition, you're not one of us, so you get less rights, you get less everything. And so I'm not going to be in favor of that. But
Zionism is not an emancipatory movement. That's why it's not emancipatory nationalism. Not that the distinction is important for history, but we're not even talking about that right now anyway.
Yeah, but my point, guys, to everyone, including you and Tucker and everybody, is let's get to our disagreements after we win. So after we win, you go towards socialism. Whoever wants to go towards nationalism, go that way. We'll split up and we'll have beautiful arguments and debates and all of that stuff. But let's take down the prison guards first. The establishment are the prison guards. They're the maintainers of the corporate system. So let's knock that down first. Let's unleash populism on both sides. And then let's go have elections and let's figure out what's more popular. Let's have democracy.
I think that historically speaking, given that socialism is an abolition and reconstruction of the capitalist hierarchy, whereas fascism is actually a mechanism of control to reassert the capitalist hierarchy, this exact dynamic that you're talking about has played out in the past, with fascists winning. When liberalism is failing and contradictions worsen, and people recognize that they're desperate for new alternatives, most people, or not most people, but capital owners who still have their remaining crumb of power will then align themselves with fascists.
So I think that there are two paths to fascism that I want to avoid. And the way to avoid it is to fix the system. So number one path is people get so mad at the injustices of this current corrupt system that they go in the Fuentes direction and beyond Fuentes, right? To whatever is beyond Fuentes. And so at that point, if that becomes popular enough because of suppression, and that's what's happening now, the Barry Weiss of the world are suppress, suppress, suppress. Don't let them breathe. Don't let them breathe, right? And so they're helping Fuentes and beyond Fuentes more than they realize. So that's one path to fascism. The other path is the path we're on now. This is the establishment is the path to fascism. Because what's going to happen next is Palantir. Palantir tested all their technology in Gaza. Now Larry Ellison and the guys at Palantir are saying, we now know how to control a population. So they're going to bring that here. If populists on the right or left don't win, or some sort of combination don't win in 2028,
I just
then
don't
the
think
Ellisons and the Peter Thiels and And those guys, the Palantines, are going to turn this current establishment into a fascist establishment.
I think
do you see what I'm saying?
I think, well, one, I do see what you're saying. I think that we're already there in many ways. I think that the new iteration, like the Republicans have already become a post-liberal party, and Donald Trump is doing that right now with the type of populism that you're talking about, with the sloppyism, if you will, where liberalism has been an abject failure, and that's the reason why one of the two major parties is basically evolving beyond, and the other one is always in a consistent conciliatory or conceding tone towards the other party that is restructuring itself as a fascist one. And my point is that the normal evolution beyond that point would be Tucker Carlson. I don't think J.D. Vance is going to lead the Republican Party in the future.
I think Tucker Carlson.
I think
is
it's
the
going
most
to be the
likely
Tucker
win.
Carlson that leads the party.
But I don't think.
But do you think Tucker Carlson is going to go in there and actually take out Palantir and
Yes.
corporate capital? I don't. I do not believe.
No, those
that
are two
at
different
all.
things. Two different things. Palantir and corporate capital are different.
I don't think Tucker Carlson does that at all.
Look, I don't know. I can't speak for him at all. But to me, what you're describing, I don't think that the right-wing voters, best exemplified probably by Tucker Carlson, and we agree with that, right? That he's probably the best avatar for the right-wing voters,
Yeah.
right? I don't think they're fascists. I don't think that they necessarily want to go towards fascism. I think they're populists. And so we can disagree about that.
I think right-wing populism is fascism. Right-wing populism is fascism in the most like
it doesn't have to be at all.
Historically,
And you don't even know if
but
they're
then why?
right-wing.
What's the difference? So then
why
Tucker Carlson's a socialist.
So look, here, I'll
He
give you one.
believes in free healthcare. He believes in Medicare for all. He believes in, everyone being able to afford a home.
No. You don't. Your two options aren't fascist and socialist. Those are not your only options.
Okay, what's the option for Tucker? What does he want?
So, for example, Marjorie Taylor Greene. So she gets untethered from corporate PACs, right? So all of a sudden, Epstein, Israel. But then our audience asked her, this is real, asked her to support Ro Khanna's bill on lower drug prices. And all of a sudden, she supports the bill on lower drug prices, okay? So, and then what does she do? She's like, wait, the healthcare premium shouldn't double, right? So she's now was headed in that direction, ideologically.
And now she's
headed
retired.
in that direction. No, I got you. But so that's not a person that was secretly fascist. That was not secretly heading in a fascist direction. The more she opened her eyes to populism, the more she realized we agreed, right? So instead of saying, no, I think you're a secret fascist and I'm going to hate you, well, my point is, wait, maybe we should open our eyes together and go, oh, we have a common enemy. The common enemy is the establishment. Let's go get those sons of bitches.
I think the common
and then
enemy
we'll have a
is-
democracy, and then we'll see, do people want to go right or left? And they don't have to go all the way to socialists, and they don't have to go all the way to fascists. They could find a nice place somewhere on the spectrum that is right for America.
Yeah, I guess I don't have the same level of confidence that you do in any politician, really, because it's not like I have this degree of confidence in even Democrats, really, but I certainly do not have that for, like, the healthy skepticism and scrutiny that I have for Democrats is even twofold, if not tenfold, for Republicans who have spent their entire political careers harming the working poor.
So let me ask you the last question. So I want someone on the populist left to win, Ro Khanna, Jon Stewart, someone along those lines, right? I don't want Tucker and Marjorie Taylor Greene to win. They're on the right. So we don't agree on a whole bunch of stuff. And some of the stuff that's really important.
Like
right?
Marjorie Taylor Greene is like, oh, why are we funding Ukraine or Israel? We should be bombing Mexico instead. I think that's ridiculous.
So we can get into all that. But my
And that's
question
not
to you,
like a minor disagreement is what I'm saying. I think
No,
that's
I
an
got you.
insane thing to say.
okay, but if you had to pick between Tucker and Marco Rubio, right? Marco Rubio being more classic establishment uniparty.
I'm not voting for either. Like,
No,
there's
I'm putting a gun to your head and you're going to
pull the
who's
trigger.
the president, Rubio or Tucker?
Pull the trigger. I'm dead anyway. Both will if given the opportunity, both will end me, because this is no different than like, well, gun to your head, establishment Democrat versus establishment Republican. They are both in the margins. The difference between Tucker Carlson and Marco Rubio on some issues might actually favor Tucker Carlson. Let's say he is genuine when he says, every American should own a house. What's going on? Maybe he is real about that and he wants to solve the housing crisis. Sure, that's good. but he might be more reactionary than Marco Rubio, at least in the way that he's talked about things when he saw his legacy Americans and that we have 65 million immigrants that need to be deported, which happens to be the number of Mexicans and Latino people in this country, right? The Hispanic population in this country. So maybe he might be even more reactionary than Marco Rubio in terms of an initiative that designs concentration camps. So the surreal scenario that you're presenting is technically no different than the harm reduction voting narratives that the Democrats that push for as well.
Then what's the answer, brother?
The answer is you continue organizing, you continue building external pressure mechanisms, whether it be the union.
But that's what's happening right now.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's pressuring Tucker to go towards us.
And you continue. Okay, good. Then we keep fighting, and then we keep pushing Tucker further and further until he's running around saying he's a socialist. He still would be a nationalist socialist, but I think
no. The problem, super last thing. The problem is, you're worried they're going to turn into fascists and you start concentration camps.
I think that they are already.
They're worried that you're communist and you're going to start concentration camps. Whereas I'm saying, guys,
who would I put in the concentration camps if I were to make them?
Okay, I don't want any piece of that. So okay,
I'm just saying.
Okay, so my point is,
if
I'm blocking your guys.
If the option is imprisoning every brown person in the country versus imprisoning financial criminals, right? I think that the overwhelming majority of Americans would go, no, yeah, put the bosses in jail, as opposed to, if that's the gun to your head equation. I think
but one in your hypothetical, one is literally criminals. Of course, you put them in jail. Like the white collar criminals are still criminals.
That's the reason
right, but
why.
That's not a concentration camp. That's just enforcing the law.
I mean, yeah.
So look. Because you're both so worried about communism and fascism, it's preventing you from working together to topple your actual immediate present threat, which is the establishment, which is going to wind up in fascism anyway. So Mike, let's topple them first, get rid of the most immediate fascist threat, and team up with populism. So if you put a gun to my head, I'm not saying I'm going to vote for Tucker, period. No, I'm going to vote for someone on the left, a left-wing populist. But gun to my head, Tucker or Rubio or Ted Cruz, that's not close. I'll take my chances with Tucker over Rubio and Cruz, which is certain oppression and disgusting and also nationalist and the worst of the abuses and corporatist and just every terrible thing that you could imagine. I don't want the status quo.
I mean, I think voting for Tucker over Marco Rubio, who would inevitably yield Tucker as the final evolution of fascism, is basically jumping on the fascist line and
no,
cutting.
You're making
you're going
enormous
to I think Tucker Carlson is more of I think Tucker Carlson is more of a principled fascist than even Marco Rubio is. Marco Rubio is an establishment Republican that is responsible for unimaginable amounts of violence all around the world.
Who wants to start the war in Venezuela? Rubio does, not Tucker.
I agree.
Who's more pro-war?
Tucker Carlson,
no question.
Tucker Carlson, outside of the confines of establishment media, now says he doesn't want a war with Venezuela. I agree with you, except when he had a crumb of power, when he was within the confines of mainstream media, Tucker Carlson was still very much in favor of all the wars. What makes you think that when he has a crumb of power, he's not going to snap back into being a wonderful servant of the same capital-owning masters, the military-industrial complex that is demanding war with Venezuela, or Exxon and Chevron and numerous other industries of extraction that want to take as much of the Venezuelan oil as possible without any sort of government intervention. So he would do the same exact thing and be also worse when it comes to even, and this is not even an argument for Marco Rubio, both, like I said, kill me instead, but they're both the same side of the evil fascist coin. One is just more ideologically grounded in fascism, I think, and that is Tucker Carlson.
No, the most irrational phrase we have in the English language is, I'd rather have the devil I know than the devil I don't know. No, that makes no sense. The devil I know is a devil. I know Rubio and Cruz and all those guys are certain death for democracy, certain death for the idea of America. And we have to get off that road as soon as possible. So, and you are making a whole heap of assumptions about Tucker and MTG. Hold on, maybe you're right, and maybe you're not right.
The difference between Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes is that Tucker Carlson is much more media trained after doing media for as long as Nick Fuentes has been alive. So he knows what not to say. That's it. That's the big difference.
All
I
right,
think.
that's your assumption. But for
He
me, I
is
have
far-
to partner with populists on the right.
Okay.
Otherwise, we will never, ever, ever defeat the establishment, and we'll both be defeated by them, and they'll laugh their ass off at us, right? So what form does
Well,
that partnership take? I don't know.
Again, I don't necessarily care about Tucker in general, but I do care about his audience, and I think that he is leading them. I guess in some ways he's leading them in an anti-Israel slant, which is good.
Yes, very
Okay?
much so.
And whenever he leans into left populist sentiment, that's a good thing. That his audience is like, oh, I actually do agree with that. That is good. However, I think he's doing that to win favor with people like yourself and many others who are in the margins who go, why am I not hearing this from any liberal in mainstream media? Why am I only hearing this from Tucker Carlson? I kind of like him. But I think his ultimate ambition is not that dissimilar from whatever the Marco Rubio would do or whatever the Donald Trump is doing currently.
Can I get agreement that even if it's a ruse, if he helps stop the genocide, that is a massive good thing and would never be done by the Rubios and the Cruzes of the world. So, like, can we take that win isolated by itself?
But I don't think he would do that, is my point.
But he's he's trying to end the genocide now.
I know, but I think if he was in a position of power and not like because when he was.
But
when
let's
he,
work.
when he
But
was
forget
at
the
Fox News.
hypothetical, Haas.
But when he was,
let's
yeah,
work
I'm
now.
not even talking about the
different
hypothetical.
issues.
When he was at Fox News, he was pro all of America's wars. That's when he had a closeness to real power, and he was again a servant of capital, but more directly. And in that moment, that was what Tucker Carlson was doing. There is no indication that if he actually came to real political power, that he would do anything different than still serve the interests of capital as he has his entire career.
If somebody like Tucker, MTG, or Massey doesn't win on the right, and someone like Ro Khanna, Jon Stewart, Nina Turner doesn't win on the left, then we're in a world of trouble. And, there's no that path is super dark.
I think
so
in general,
to me, I'd rather take populists on both sides and see which. I mean, the perfect dream is populists on both sides.
Okay, but
and
Donald
let's
Trump,
go to an election and see if the country wants to go populist left or right.
You are relitigating.
But Trump is an obvious fake populist.
Okay, but that's
Like,
my
that's
point.
the most
but he
obvious
didn't
thing in
run
the
as an
world.
obvious fake populist. He ran as a real populist.
I got you.
And that's
but
my
Trump
point.
didn't do anything that. So, like, for example, right now Tucker says end the genocide, end the funding of Israel. Trump never did anything real like that.
Except Tucker is saying that because he is no longer in the same rooms as he once used to be.
Good, wonderful. He's not in those rooms
I know,
anymore.
but if he were
Is
to
it
actually
possible he
secure
changed?
power, I don't think he actually had a genuine change of heart. I don't believe that at all. But it doesn't even matter to me whether he had a genuine change of heart. I care about his output because he's a media figure, and on that front, I'm glad that he is anti-Israel. Okay. Having said that, I think that the real reason why he's doing that is because he has to read the room, and he no longer has a higher priority of being a servant of capital, at least for now, until he gets to a position of power, at which point I think he would still advance the same exact agenda that Donald Trump did. Donald Trump came in with the exact same sentiment.
You think Tucker's going to work for Israel like Trump is?
Absolutely.
No way.
I do think if Tucker Carlson...
Oh, that is the very last thing
I think
Tucker
Bernie
Carlson
Sanders would also not be an anti-imperialist if he came into a position of power. I think as it stands currently, without external pressure mechanisms that make it a non-starter, and that's changing, and the environment is changing dramatically right now, you are never going to have a real anti-imperialist figure, a real like anti-Israel figure that is capable of decoupling America from Israel.
Haas, when I said that the right wing might come towards us on Israel, people said you're nuts. That's not going to happen, and it did happen. So my point isn't rah me. My point is maybe we should be a little bit more open. Maybe it could happen on another issue and another issue, and maybe we can work together to actually end the funding of Israel.
But I think those people are coming to terms with this because of the endless amounts of pressure from the wokes that were jailed under the Biden administration. 3,500 student protesters were thrown in jail for protesting against Israel, for example. It's the wokes that are unironically carrying this conversation, paired up with a barrage of pain and violence that people actually saw all over their social media feeds. And that is the reason why a lot of people inevitably came to that conclusion and realized that paired up with Israel's arrogance as well, and endless demands for control and endless demands for fealty. But ultimately, like I said, that was an external pressure point that actually caused a lot of people, a lot of voters, to finally come to that conclusion as well. So it's the conversation that we're having still has to be about continuing to build external pressure, like external pressure movements, and not care about Tucker Carlson necessarily, but care about winning and convincing Tucker Carlson's audience. Just like not caring about the Republican Party in general, but instead caring about convincing the Republican voters. And the only way to do that, and I think you and I agree with this on this, is by offering them something: housing, healthcare, an end to corporate corruption in this country. These are the things that we can actually win the attention and the loyalty of the right-wing voters on, without having to concede on any of the social issues whatsoever.
Yeah, let's end on agreement. Yeah. And my daughter's doing this to me on about dinner.
Anyway,
so
everybody,
God bless, man. Hey, happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
This was a much more agreeable Thanksgiving, ladies and gentlemen. You got to flex for the camera for the purpose of, you do it every year, for the purpose of continuation. Here it is. The 7th year of Thanksgiving is complete, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you tomorrow. I'll be back as always. Peace and good night. Hasan Reaction is one of the best ones in the React channel.